do this. When you're trying something new, the temptation can be to dive in without much research or planning. This can end up making things much more complicated than they need to be. Sometimes it pays to stop, sit down, and do a bit more research. Turns out that how to make paper costumes, Weldon's fancy dress, and loads of others are all right there for study on the internet, especially as I found them on archive.org. How to make paper patterns suggested that crepe paper costumes are attached to a simple cotton slip. So instead of trying to make some complicated base, I started again and used the American Duchess pattern for a simple 1920 slip. I will link that below. This was a lot more successful and gave me a base garment that was simple, fitted me, and something I could build my costume on. So one of the things I've discovered in this project is that all crepe paper is not the same. For my multicoloured stuff, I ordered this, which is Florist's crepe paper. It's beautiful. It's got all different colours. It's not very long. That's how long it is. Problem with this colour stuff is not enough of it. I was in a bit of stress, so I went to the local craft chain store to get more crepe paper. But what they have isn't. This is glorified tissue paper. It's really, really flimsy. This is not what they made costumes out of in the 1920s. So I went online again and I actually found some bigger rolls of Florist crepe paper. It's only £3 a roll. I've got 3 rolls of this. Means I can do some experimenting and start again. Look at this fabulous colour. The original picture has got this kind of ombre effect, and I'm sure there's lots of clever things you can do with crepe paper, but I'm out of time, so I bought some. You can stretch crepe paper out, so you can actually pull it. I don't know if you can see, but now that is now wider than the top. So what I'm actually going to do is gather it so that it sticks out, I think. It's just going to involve lots of fiddling and playing to see what gives me a nice effect. You can also stretch it right out. And you can do twists to make like a frilly effect. Oops, there you go. Quite like that, and it will just stay. It's lovely stuff once it's stopped playing. I'll get back to you when I've decided what I'm doing. I've marked 49 centimetres up from the hem. I've just got to pin this paper on. Ouch. Do you know what would have been good? Not to sew up the side of this. Okay, I've decided to go for the rather extreme measure of cutting it right down the back, because there's a little bit of spare movement in there and it's going to make working with it so much easier. It's going to be worth the extra hassle. Now we can hopefully just lay this on, just measure up the back, my 49 centimetres. It's supposed to be fun, so let's not make life difficult for ourselves. So I'm going to do a little tiny bit of an overlap there, but not much. And just pin this on. So I'm just pinning this edge of this paper to the mark all the way around, and then I'm going to sew it. Another change of plan. Pinning it was really hard, so I didn't bother. I just drew a line all the way along where I wanted that edge to go and just sewed it on. Feeding the paper around the sewing machine is quite tricky. Next step is feathers. I need to decide how wide they are. Again, looking at my little picture, half the length of my hand maybe. Use a little bit of scale. So half the length of her hand is about 4 inches. This piece of paper is 10 inches. If I divide this into thirds, I can get 3 sets of feathers out of each one. I'm going to pick a colour. Definitely going to use the pink. Get your paper, stretch it a little bit, fold it up a few times. The 10 inches divided by 3 is 3 1/3. Let me just cut along there. Oh, that might be too many times folded. It's quite tough. That's better. So I've discovered it's easier, obviously, if I do that thirds fold straight away and actually using a cutting wheel. It's not a new blade. kind of get these wing bits done. I've cut a sort of vaguely feather shape and then run a gathering thread along the top and gathering that up to about half the width. This is just from experiment. I've just been playing as to what gives me a kind of feathery shape. With this one, I've glued some florist wire, which is really light and fine. I just sort of stuck it between two pieces of paper to try and get some stiffness, because the original paper book says wire the petals, so I'm doing it like petals and then I'm going to cover them in feathers and hope that it looks right. With this one I might actually just put the wire up the middle and pinch it shut, so I'm just using a PVA glue because that's what I've got. The original book says paste, but I don't really know what they mean by paste, and because I have a woodworking husband I just steal his wood glue. Because these wires are quite short, we just twist them together to get length. I guess if you've got access to a whole roll of this, you don't have to do that. And I want it longer than both ends. I'm just going to glue that in there. To make the feathers on the bodice easier to sew, because they're strips of crepe paper, pinning this stuff is really tricky, so I'm just drawing straight lines so that I can just stitch along, follow along and sew it straight. I reckon about an inch apart should give me plenty of overlap, and I have enough paper for that. So this costume has a little hat, so I've just made a little hat. There we go. It's just 6 wedge shapes. They're kind of like triangles with a curved edge. Measured so they're a 1/6 of my head plus seam allowance all sewn together, and then I've literally added a strip about the size of my head around the side. It ended up too big, but you know, it doesn't matter. I've just taken it in when I sewed the band on, because this just needs decoration on it to finish the costume off. I realised that this hat was supposed to be black. One option was to cover it in crepe paper, but to be honest, it was just quicker to make another one out of a scrap of black fabric. I had buttons for eyes and a bit of cardstock, as the original How to Make Paper Costumes suggested.